Good morning, everybody. So I'm so glad that you're here because today we're going to talk about fasting. Lots of people do it these days in some way, shape, or form. Their window of eating might be different, but lots of people are trying some variation of intermittent fasting. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about the different aspects of that. And today we're going to talk about what will break your fast. I get this question all the time. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that today so you understand what will break a fast and what won't. For those of you that don't know me yet, I'm Jen Miner, the owner of Thrive Health and Wellness, and I help people heal, lose weight, take charge of how they show up in their life without drugs or surgery. So what will break my fast? So ideally, you only want to drink water when you're fasting. Not everybody can do that or wants to do that. So we're going to look a little bit deeper so we understand more of the mechanics behind breaking a fast. So what really breaks your fast is insulin. All right. So keeping it low, you're getting the benefits of fasting. So what does and does not interfere with insulin? Okay. Well, carbohydrates and protein both stimulate insulin. Many people think of carbohydrates, but we forget about the protein factor. So yes, Mickey, there you go. Anything but water. Ideally, that is exactly what you want to be doing. If you put like half and half in your coffee or milk in your coffee, this breaks your fast. There's a lot of lactose, which is milk sugar in those things. For protein powders, besides your collagen powder, things like whey protein, this has a huge impact on insulin. So if you're diabetic or you're genetically prone to blood sugar struggles, where your insulin might be impacted a little bit more easily than someone else, you want to stick with vegan protein powders, even when you're not fasting, okay, because that's going to have the best impact on your insulin response. But you definitely want to avoid those altogether. Some people put them in their coffee. You don't want to be doing that because that will absolutely break a fast, okay? So if you want some suggestions for a good vegan protein powder for when you're not fasting, you can always put that in the comments, and we'll be sure to get you some recommendations that might fit best for you, okay? Because different people do well on different things. So we might ask you a few questions. Well, we will ask you a few questions, and then we'll help you figure out which one would be best for you. So now there is a certain type of carbohydrate that doesn't affect your insulin, and that's fiber, okay? So fiber is not going to increase insulin. Let's say you're eating celery or like a small green salad. Well, the carbohydrates in that is low because it's mostly fiber. It's not going to have too much effect on your insulin. Most likely you're putting some type of dressing on that though. So there you go. That changes the mix. And maybe it's not just fiber anymore. So that would definitely be something to factor in and consider. So let's talk about fat. So fat has the least effect on insulin. So things like MCT oil, butter, coconut oil in your coffee, as long as it's strictly fat, it doesn't have an impact or too much of an impact on your insulin levels, at least not enough to break your fast as far as the science has shown so far. So now, if you were to do, let's say, whole cream in your coffee instead of like half and half or milk, that has like less than one carbohydrate, at least some of them do. You have to look at that. Look at your nutrition label, okay? Typically they have less than a carbohydrate in them. And then don't forget about the conversation we had about cow dairy. Remember that last week? But whole cream is something that if it's less than a carb, probably isn't going to, especially, the smallest amount that you're putting in your coffee, is most likely not going to impact your insulin levels. Okay. So in that regard, that would be safe. Okay. So I get asked a lot about alternative sweeteners, sugar alcohols. So let's look at those for a second. So you have xylitol. That does affect insulin a little bit. Okay, it's low on the scale, but it does impact it a little bit, not as high. Erythritol has zero effect on insulin. Okay, maltitol is really bad. don't even use that. Okay, the maltitol syrup is 52 on the glycemic index, and regular sugar is like 60. So you're not really saving anything there at all. And then we have like stevia and monk fruit sweetener, okay, which they don't have any effect on insulin. Tea is fine, coffee is fine. They're not going to impact your insulin. But remember, lots and lots of caffeine is going to stimulate cortisol, which then increases your insulin. All right. So making sure that you're keeping that stimulation to a minimum. So try and get lower caffeinated coffee. If you are drinking coffee, that would be the safest way to do it, or a healthy Swiss water decaf coffee. So when they decaffeinate coffee, they use a lot of chemicals in the process. So I will only use certain decaf coffees, the ones that use a Swiss water process to decaffeinate it. Okay, so check out if you're drinking decaffeinated coffee, that's great. Check out the decaffeination process. So sometimes if it's Swiss water decaffeinated, usually it's marked right on the label. But not all of them do that. So if you have one that you really, really like, you might have to email the company and find out, or check on their website and their frequently asked questions, something like that. So stress also stimulates cortisol. So if you're freaking out in the morning and things are extremely stressful, that morning routine, getting the kids off to school or getting out the door to work or whatever it is, if that's an extremely stressful process, that's also going to raise cortisol. Okay, especially if it's for a longer period of time, then your cortisol is not only increased, but it stays at that higher level. So, you want to make sure that you're managing your stress in an effective way and keeping your caffeinated drinks, whether it's tea or coffee, to a minimum. So sometimes I do have blends of coffee that I really enjoy because they're herbal blends, they're infused with mushrooms, things like that. And so what I'll do is I'll mix them with a decaffeinated just to cut the amount of caffeine that's in them. So this way I'm getting some of the benefits of the blends, but yet not all of the caffeine that comes with it. So that's something that you can do too. Supplements, they don't increase your insulin, so you don't have to worry about that. Green powders, sometimes people will put like green powders in their waters when they're drinking their water in the morning. Usually that has like less than a gram of carbohydrates, and usually it has some kind of fiber in it. There are usually a lot of chlorophyll and a lot of concentrated greens, so that's totally fine. But again, you have to read your nutrition labels, okay, and know what you're looking for, because that's going to be the key to success in that area, to know if you're breaking your fast or if you're not breaking your fast. Okay, so this is important information to make sure that you do this in the best way possible so that you're getting the most out of it. The last thing that we want is for you to put all this effort into a fasting window and then not get the full benefits from it in your health. So these are important things to keep in mind. So make notes, right? Evaluate your schedule. Okay, be really conscious and aware of what you're consuming during your fasting window, and let's see how you make out. I'd love to hear.